Back once again then, Catflap Chats, episode 38. I just said I'm excited about this one. So, old colleague of mine, Michelle Owen, but most famously for known as Sky Sports news presenter, broadcaster, host, podcast host, columnist.
Columnist. He's done his research.
Yeah. What else? I've probably missed some stuff now. Soccer Saturday, Sky Sports News, Premier League, Nation, Capital. I've definitely missed something. Five. That was. I wrote that down as well. BBC Five Live. Keen golfer, dog mum, actual mum, wife,
cat mum.
Cat mum. There we are. I knew I'd forgotten something. How are you? What's going on?
All good. Absolutely sweltering, but do you know what? I used to enjoy this weather, and now we've got the little one. It's hard, isn't it, when you've got a little one? It's like 30 degrees in their bedroom. Before, I would have loved this, but now I'm just look at the forecast. You're like, oh, there's another night of no sleep. Great, but all good. Yeah, all good. Thanks. You're all good. You're looking well.
Well, yeah, I try to stay alive at the moment, I think, mate. Just,
I know, after what happened in spring, yeah.
I know, it's, COVID and all the other stuff, but nah, it's all good here, man. What's lockdown been like for you then? I suppose for people who might not have come across what you do, give people a little insight into sort of what your life's like now and what you're up to at the moment and how that's been affected with the lack of sport recently over the last couple of months.
You know, it's funny, like, because a few years ago I made the decision to commit to sport full time, and I wasn't sure. And my husband was like, football will always be there. It will always be a thing. You don't need to ever worry about that. And then, lockdown happened and football wasn't there. And I was meant to go back to work after having our little boy in March to do the Keeping in Touch days. And the day I was due back was the Saturday after the football got cancelled on the Friday after Mikel Arteta tested positive for COVID. Yeah. I was like, it'll be a few weeks. And then, we all know what happened after that. And it was just a bit of a shock, really, because I completely expected to get back to work properly, like end of April, going into May, finish the season, do lots of games for Soccer Saturday, which is what I do on a Soccer Saturday, and lots of weeks, maybe get back down to the studio presenting, which is what I talked to my bosses about, to be ready to do that. And then in June, we were going to the Euros. So
I was going
to cover Wales. Were you?
Yeah,
I was to Baku and then Rome. And the boys were coming with me because I was working for ITV Sport National Network as the Wales reporter.
Yeah.
But again, it's like 10th of June, we should be flying to Baku and we're at home. So it was all just a bit weird. And then football did luckily come back in the middle of June. And I started doing games again and I started working. But, it's funny because we'll look back at it and we'll be like, oh, yeah, lockdown. But it did feel long, like massively. Like I don't class now as now is not lockdown. People say it is. It's absolutely not. But I think having a baby kept us very busy. And my husband was still working partly. He lost a lot of work, but he works from home. He always works from home anyway. So he was around a bit more, which was nice. But it was sort of on my own with, a little baby a lot of the time. And I was sort of in headspace ready to go back to work and back to like football and work me.
Yeah.
So that took a bit of adjusting too. But, compared to most people, I think we've had it pretty good. We have a little garden, which we're very lucky to have. And, we're all right, and touch wood, health-wise, that's the main thing, isn't it?
Yeah, of course.
But it was a bit of adjusting to not go back to work, which was disappointing. And like everyone, we've been affected job-wise and work-wise.
Yeah.
So it was lovely to get back to it in June.
I've got a few things I want to chat to you about today. Like, obviously, I know you through working together and know you for a good few years now. What do you want to chat about first? Do you want to chat about mum life and what you went through with that? Or do you want to chat through about how you got started in radio?
Your
and that
podcast.
Led into sport? Hey, mate, I'm easy, pal. I wing it all. But
let's go chronologically. Let's go
to
me, that makes sense.
How did it all? Have you got a drink, by the way? You sat there.
A cup of tea.
Have you? I've got for the first one.
What have you got?
A non-alcoholic Tiny Rebel.
Oh, you've changed.
I've got training in the morning, and I just like if I have one or two beers now the sun's out, I'll have.
You get excited to become dehydrated because it's a little bit hot, and then you'll go in the morning and you'll be hanging.
Horrific, mate. I've already dehydrated anyway.
You see, I don't drink a lot, and because I'm trying to get back. I'm a kilogram off my pre-birth weight now, like
Okay.
0.8 of a kilogram. So
Yeah.
I'm not drinking much at the moment. I'm just trying to get there, which is exciting. So
Trying to train. Fair play to you. So
yeah,
yeah, take us back to the beginning then, pal. What was
yeah.
the route
So
into
yeah,
broadcasting?
I sort of always knew I wanted to do it. I was just one of those weird people that always knew that they wanted to work in broadcasting. So when I was sort of 16, we lived in the middle of Wales in Newtown, and I used to go down to our local radio station, local newspaper. I went to uni. I did the student radio, hospital radio, community
Yeah.
radio. Like, so much work experience. Just spent all my spare time doing work experience. And when I was going into my third year, I spent the summer in London working there. So I did stuff at Sky and a couple of national radio stations. And I was like, yeah, no, this is definitely what I want to do. And I got a place at Cardiff School of Journalism to do their postgrad. It was like 10 grand. I was like, my heart isn't really in this, I don't really want to do this. One, because it's 10 grand. And two, but just because, like when your gut tells you something isn't right. Yeah. I was like, do I really want to like go and study and do a load more exams for another year? And I've been doing a lot of practical stuff. I started presenting and getting a little bit of money for it. And it wasn't like that I thought I was too good for anything. It's a really like prestigious course and it was amazing to get a place on it. But for me, it didn't feel right. And like a couple of weeks before I was due to go, I'd applied for this job at this group of stations in South Wales, and I got it on enemy radio. Yeah. So that was sort of part-time. So I did that. I did some presenting on Nation, and then I was doing like travel news in the evenings. So I was just doing really weird hours, making ends meet, and was there for a few years, went on to present Drive on Nation, did a sports show. And then while I was there, started going out and about to Cardiff and Swansea, doing the sort of post-match presses or doing little match reports because they had a football show on Nation. So when I left there, I had like collated this little sort of pile of stuff I got. Did breakfast for a year in Bristol on the Breeze, which was good. That was maternity cover. I hate getting up early. So,
traveling down there.
Getting up early. Yeah, well, so I'd moved to Bristol by then, and I was living with my now husband, so that was fine. But it was just
4 o'clock
at
starts.
4 in the morning. Yeah, I would literally. I was one of those weirdos that would set my alarm clock to the minute, so it'd be like 4:37, and I'd leave it as late as I could to get up. And then I was there for a year. So while I was there, I had some contacts from work experience at Sky, and I started getting back in touch with them. I kept asking them, until in the end they were like, "Yeah, okay, we'll give you a go on ISDN," which is like, ISDN is when you hear someone's like voice reporting, but you don't actually see them. So it's like when the score is up, so you hear them talking. So I did that for a few seasons while I was at Capital. So I'd moved from the Breeze to Capital, but while I was at Capital, they were like, "Oh, will you go in Vision, like on camera?" And I was like, "Oh, I don't know. I've never done TV before. Radio has always been my background." Yeah. And at that point, I was doing Drive on Capital. I was like, okay, so I gave it a go, and it went really well, and everything sort of went from there, really. So I was doing Drive on Capital, and Sky were asking me to do more and more. Yeah. And long story short, in the end, like, I had to make the call, like, do you want to do sport or do you want to carry on doing radio? And that's when Adam said, football will always be there. So make the jump. And I had finished a few pies by then, like the podcast and columns and doing stuff for Premier League Productions, doing stuff for Sky. So I made the jump, and luckily for me, it's been okay so far. And
haven't looked back quite yet.
Yeah, exactly. And started presenting then a little bit after that, started doing the sport on Sky News, and that evolved into going down to Sky Sports News. And, the way we talk about things when we look back on them is like a chronological sort of list. But as everyone knows, it's very windy. It's not that straightforward. There's loads and loads and loads of setbacks and knockbacks. But if you're in the right place at the right time, you have a bit of luck, I think things work out for you. Just if you want it badly enough, if you spend the hours putting the time in.
Practicing.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that's where we are today. That's where we are now. And hopefully we'll see what happens in the next few months in terms of work. But I'm hoping next season things will gradually get back to normal. Yeah. I mean, I did, from when lockdown was sort of eased for football up to, well, when did the season finish? End of July. I think I did about 13 games. So I was quite happy with that in sort of 5 weeks. So I did a lot in that time. And I'd be happy if it continued at that rate when the season starts back up. So we'll have to see.
Class. So to get off, you obviously did your apprenticeship, I suppose, through radio and audio. What was it about that you loved and enjoyed and you must have got loads of setbacks coming through that, because I know what the industry's like. There's so many people that want to do it. There's so many people that want to be at Cardiff City or be at Swansea. How did you break through that barrier? What was different about you? Was it work ethic, knowledge? I mean, you've obviously played a good level of football as well, which I'm not sure people know about. What was it that kept you in there and got you through the door?
I don't know really, just like being annoying probably. Because when I was in uni, like obviously I was like every other student, and I went out and I was drinking loads and having a really good time, especially like in my first and second year. It was more my second year that I really committed to what I wanted to do. So, you know, I'd work in the student bar, like on a Friday, we'd finish at 1 or 2 in the morning, and then I'd be up doing like breakfast on Nation for free, like at 6 a.m. And it was just all those
Tough,
little
that
things
is.
that other people probably wouldn't want to do. Like I remember like being in uni, my mates were like, why are you doing this? Like, you know, it's such, like, it's taken so much time. And then I remember like an ex-boyfriend being like, oh, do you really have to work on Saturday? Like, can you pull a sickie? But it was like, you just have to realise like you can never do anything like that if you wanted to, you know, have a good reputation and stuff.
Yeah.
And I was just always willing to do loads of work experience and work for free, which I know lots of people are. And I really do, you know, for me, that was my route in. I know some people now have very different routes because a lot of stuff that we did when we were coming through isn't there anymore. Like, you know, local radio is shrinking all
Yeah.
the time. But even
Yeah.
community radio, there isn't as much of that anymore, and hospital radio. And it was just taking the time to do all of that and trying not to take it too personally when someone didn't want you. I must have written to hundreds of radio stations, like hundreds. And when I was finishing uni, I was panicking like that I wasn't going to have a job and stuff. And I was going to go to Cardiff Journalism School and do that. And yeah, I think I got very lucky as well. Like, you know, really lucky to get the opportunities when I did. And we just sort of think, okay, like things happen for a reason,
Yeah.
and so on and so forth. But I guess I just often won't take no for an answer, which is probably really, really annoying.
Hey, persistence over resistance, pal, works every time.
Yeah, I like
Just
that.
keep on knocking on that door.
Yeah.
What sort of broadcaster presenter were you when you were at the sports grounds? You know, coming through uni or whatever, and
Mm.
those early years when you'd meet the players or the manager. Were you starstruck, or was it game face on, or
Yeah.
you,
So when we were like in uni, I did like a lot of radio presenting and things like that in the studios and stuff. And then like, obviously when we went into the bigger radio stations, I was never starstruck or anything like that. Even when I went on work experience, there were obviously big names, like when it's Sky, like Eamon Holmes was there and things like that. And I don't ever really remember being starstruck. Like probably would like put it on Facebook, like, oh, just sat with Eamon Holmes. Like,
yeah.
but then like in terms of football, oh, sorry, the cat's literally just jumping off the fence because someone made a jump. Right, Pops. Yeah, in terms of sort of going to football grounds, that sort of happened in my early 20s. And I remember really clearly doing Brendan Rodgers at Swansea as one of my first presses when I was with Nation. And like
Yeah.
that was the harder thing, going into a room full of like, you know, 30 journos. No one had a clue who I was. And like putting your recorder down on the desk and whether you're brave enough to ask a question or not. I found that really intimidating, like going into press boxes and going into press rooms and not knowing anyone. And it wasn't because those people are my friends now, you know, they're my
Yeah.
colleagues and I know them really well. But when you first sort of start out, I guess, on the circuit of sports reporting, whether it's in a local patch or a national patch, it's super, super intimidating because you don't know anyone. So like, and
And
everyone's sat on tables like all together and it's like, oh,
yeah.
you walk in, where do you sit?
It's like being
Like,
back in school.
hello. Yeah. So it is intimidating and it just grows sort of organically, I guess.
And was it predominantly sort of male orientated as well? If you'd walk in a room and there's 30 journos, were you sometimes the only female in the room?
Yeah, most of the time. I would say 9 times out of 10. And I remember sort of more clearly my days when I started for Sky and rocking up with like my massive like ISDN kit. They're massive. And like I just remember it always had to walk ages and it was always really heavy. So you'd walk in, you'd be all like hot and sweaty. And you just like be looking around for like a table where no one was sat because I was quite, believe it or not, I was a little bit shy, you know?
Yeah.
So like I wouldn't know who to talk to, but people are nice and people will talk to you and they'll sit down and make conversation with you. And yeah, it was all blokes, but it never ever bothered me. Like I never saw it like that.
Yeah.
The only time I saw it like that was when I was doing a game at Swindon once, and this guy who was a community radio guy like turned around and said, "Oh, what would you do if I told you to get back in the kitchen?" I was like, "Oh, you're telling me to get back in the kitchen?" He's like, "No, I'm just saying theoretically." I was like, I'd probably just carry on doing my job. And I was like, what a weirdo.
Yeah,
And then
what
like I made sure
strange.
like when I did my report, he could hear me like loud and clear. But like think like sexism stuff doesn't never take that personally, because it's just it's really small minded, isn't it? You know, it's people that
yeah.
that can't sort of process that a woman knows something about football.
I'm gonna come
But
on.
as I say, just because people didn't talk to me when I walked into the press box, like I'm not saying they were sexist at all. Like I just
No,
didn't
no,
know
no, no.
anyone,
I know.
you
Yeah,
know,
yeah, of course. And that
apart from that
sex,
guy.
yeah, that sexism thing is something that I do want to come on to later when we start to talk
Yeah.
about social media, because again, I see a lot of what you go through, which people probably don't see if they just follow a Soccer Saturday or whatever that might be.
Yeah, sure.
What's obviously, you did Nation better. Hashtag Catwell's better. Capital.
Oh man.
What was how did you find that going from sort of, I suppose Nation is a bit more sort of not local because Capital is local, but
The capital's regional, I guess, isn't it?
it's regional and it's part of a
Yeah.
bigger brand. How did you find? Did you have to change your persona at all as you were going through these different
Yeah.
jobs?
Like when I started off doing radio, like I was a massive sort of muso, really into music. Like I love my music, and that is what I sort of started out doing because I loved music. But I always loved football. Like you said, I played football when I was like 3, and football was always there, and it never really went away. But when I started doing radio, that sort of came to the forefront. And you go to music awards, and it was all about the music. And Nation and NME were very much sort of about, at that time, they're not anymore. They were very much about indie music and rock music, that sort of thing. And then actually from Nation, I went to the Breeze, which is literally the polar opposite. It's like a cross between Smooth and Heart, the Breeze is. And but that was breakfast radio, so that was sort of more personality led. And then when I came to Capital to do Drive, I think in 2014, it was completely different. But in terms of sort of changing your persona, I would say I was still me, but it was just different. It wasn't the same sort of music passion. Like there were songs on Capital like I really liked, and I listened to Capital. Even when I was on Nation, I listened to Capital because it's just a pop fix, isn't it? It's a good station. It's like what it says on the tin. It's hit music, easy
It's
listen.
feel good, isn't it?
Perfect station for summer, And I actually, when I think of Capital, I think of my memories of being there in summer, and the stuff we did in summer was amazing. When we did even little things like the beach down Cardiff Bay was really fun, but like the Champions League, that was a massive thing, and that was a tipping point for me when we did that. We sort of had rights to get into the Champions League. We got to present and host on the stage at the Champions League festival. We got to go to both finals. It was absolutely amazing. We got to go to Switzerland and get the trophy on a private flight with Ian Rush and come back. And that after that week I was like, I don't think I can go back to presenting again, because we did all that, and I knew that opportunity with Capital was a once in a lifetime thing, and that sort of opened my eyes to be like, you need to be working in this, like in football and sport full time. And it was nice, it was a lovely crossover because I did that with Capital, and it opened my eyes to wanting to do this full time, because in the months preceding that it'd been a really big thing, like was I going to do it, sort of private conversations about it. But that week was the best week ever. And in terms of sort of, did I have to change? I didn't on Capital, because we got to do things that fitted my personality, if that makes sense. I don't really remember doing many things that made me feel like, oh no, this isn't me at all. Even though like some of the music I didn't like, but most of it I did like. So I was in my mid-20s and pretty much on brand in most aspects. Okay, I didn't go out every Friday night, but I know you do. But
not anymore, mate.
Not anymore. No, that's true. But I guess Nation was sort of a younger indie me, and Capital was sort of me growing up a little bit, even though it's aimed at a young audience. But it was definitely right place, right time for both of them.
Class. And so when you make that transition over, like you said, you'd already been doing a bit of the sports stuff in terms of what you're doing away from Capital and Nation. How did you find that transition from going from radio full time into, or kind of, I suppose, on your own 2 feet away from that full time?
Yeah, it was very rewarding because you had to like go and get and earn every piece of work, whereas with Capital or with any radio station you have a contract and you're guaranteed 5 or 6 shows a week and a set amount of money a month. So it was quite exciting, but also nerve-wracking in that respect. But yeah, I remember the day sort of I left Capital and being like, oh my God, now what? And because radio is what radio is, you leave instantly, so you don't get to say goodbye on air.
No.
And it's a shame because I think on reflection, like everyone involved would have said, I could have said goodbye on air, no problem, and I wasn't going to do anything stupid. I think that's the worry with that. And like now, actually, the irony is I do a little bit of stuff for Communicore. I help out on a podcast for them, which is the company that owns Capital, and because everything goes so well, you know. But I do remember thinking, like, the first week, okay, so now what? Like, am I going to get any work? But it was fine. You know, I think I did 3 games that week. I did some reporting for Premier League productions sort of around the country, and I started the podcast that week that I'd lined up, and work was just coming. And gradually over the season, I was becoming busier and busier. And when the presenting kicked in, I was doing sort of 6 or 7 days a week. You know, it was crazy, and almost not too busy, but like very, very busy and very, very happy about it because I loved working and I loved being busy, and it was the right time for me to be doing that because I didn't have any other commitments. So that was the time I sort of tapered down playing football. I stopped playing football as much and really focused on work really, and also because the season only runs, well, I say only August to May, so you want to make sure you've got enough work. But as it transpired, I ended up presenting over summer anyway because I just started presenting on Sky Sports News. So the transition was fine, and looking back on it, like I don't think I even missed radio particularly to start with. So I didn't really notice.
Yeah, if you're that busy, you're not going to. It's going to be hard to miss.
Yeah, exactly.
I suppose because you do so much travelling as well. You know, you could be Swindon one day.
Oh yeah.
Cardiff the next, Plymouth the next.
I was travelling everywhere, like, and London is the studio as well.
Yeah,
so at that
course.
point, I was just all over. Yeah, massively.
And how does that, you know, those days where you find, you know, everyone gets them, where you wake up and you go, oh, fucking hell, I cannot be bothered today. Because we all get them, right? How do you find that when you've got to travel to Swindon on a Tuesday night?
Yeah, I think never ever did I really get that for matches because it's just such a buzz to be at a live football match, and to this day I've never really had that when going to a game. Like honestly, the only time that really happened was when I used to do a game on a Saturday, get home at like 8 or 9, and then because I was just getting into presenting, I used to present the sport on Sunrise on Sky News on a Sunday, so I used to have to leave the house at 2 a.m. So I get home at 8 in the evening on a Saturday, inhale my tea, go to bed at like 9, and get up at like 10 to 2 and drive to London, and it was like, this is hard.
Yeah.
And there was probably 4 or 5 months like that, and that was really hard, almost every Sunday. And yeah, I think in the end, like it was like, okay, well, hopefully something's going to give. And as it was, like I moved on to different shifts, and I still did that one occasionally, and I'd still be happy to do that occasionally now, but not every Sunday. And I just remember feeling shattered. But you're not going to believe this. Then I'll go and play football on a Sunday afternoon.
Mates, what's wrong with you guys?
I don't know what's wrong with me. So I was working 7 days a week, and then I drive back up the M4 and go and play football, and that was the season I sort of stopped. I was like, this is ridiculous. So
you just got no time to yourself or your family, or
I know I'm still married, believe it or not, but yeah,
he probably loved it.
Yeah, he's pretty enjoying all the time to himself, to be fair. But yeah, looking back, it was a lot. But if I hadn't done it, we wouldn't live in the house we live in now, and I wouldn't be where I am now. So I don't regret any of it. I enjoy, you know, it was only a sight when your bloody alarm was going off at 1:50 in the morning.
Yeah, of course.
But like, I've got to say, like, you know, I'm so lucky to do what I do. I don't really feel like it's work, you know. And it sounds so cliche, and I think people say that, I'm like, oh my god, that sounds so ridiculous. But because I'm so lucky to do what I love, and you know, many people live their life and their whole life they never are fortunate enough to get that chance to do that. It's something that I felt really lucky to do up until now, for sure.
I think a lot of people, and again, just from seeing your social media and just obviously knowing the industry a tiny bit, and I don't know loads about it, but just knowing, you know, broadcasting and sports a little bit, people don't see the sacrifice and the resilience that you need in order to make it. Because for every one of you, there is probably 100 that didn't make it, if not more.
Yeah, this is going to annoy me now. It's a football manager that I was talking to the other day. Can't remember who it was, but anyway, they said, you know, they go to the pub and they sit down with their mates and they watch the game with them, and their mates say, "Oh, I know him. Like that could have been me."
Yeah.
But he turns around and he goes, "But it wasn't you."
Yeah.
and you didn't work hard enough to get it. Oh yeah, but it could have been me. But no, it wasn't you. Like, you didn't put the work in. Yeah, okay, maybe you didn't catch a break every, now and then,
Yeah.
but you have to work hard to get that opportunity. And I think that's a really, really big thing. Is a lot of people think what we do, they sort of see the end result of where we are now,
Yeah.
but don't see what sort of happens. But not like in everyone's life, don't see what happens behind closed doors. So
It's
that's
the
a really
same
good
with
point.
it's the same with players, I think, as well. Like, I could have made it if I didn't,
Yeah.
if I didn't have a bad
That's what I
knee,
mean.
or
That's what the guy.
yeah,
This is what this manager was saying about his mate in the pub, who's looking up at the TV screen, seeing
about
the
the
football in the
players.
Premier League.
Yeah, I see it that
Um,
5-a-side every week. Oh
yeah,
yeah, I played with so
I did my
I could
knee.
have. Yeah, I mean, I've
Yeah.
100% I've told girls that 100%.
It's all right. When I met my husband, he told me he was a semi-pro footballer. And I'm like, oh, who'd you play for? And like, obviously, he had no idea I knew anything about football. And like, he was in a semi-pro league, but he didn't get paid anything. And like, definitely wasn't a big deal. Like, he made out, like, oh, I get paid petrol. It's just like,
Hey,
oh, it worked out, didn't it?
better,
So,
better than a kick in the teeth, mate. Do you know what I mean?
oh yeah,
Funny.
yeah.
What's it like in the Sky Studios then, pal? Because obviously, lots of people would have seen you on Soccer Saturday with Jeff Stelling, and I was watching earlier your Bobbly the Hat clip again, which I'm going to edit it into this, I think, so people can
Nice.
hear it. And
That's so
then,
funny. When I told that joke, I didn't even think it was that funny. I was just like, and
mate,
then it went viral. I
you
rinsed him a little bit.
you rinse him because he's got a receding hairline, and then I'll
Um,
play it like kind of now, and then I'll let people hear it. Like, and then he just comes back and goes,
his comeback was good mind. I mean,
yeah,
yeah,
on the
you can never get one
spot,
over. And
on the
he's so
spot.
quick. He's so quick. Yeah, he could do that all afternoon, couldn't he? He's great. But so in the studio, yeah, it's obviously different when we're out and about for Soccer Saturday. Like, there's often no replays, so we don't get to see the goal again. So it's
Yeah.
just whatever we saw in the moment. So you have to hope you remember it right.
Are you just jotting
And
it down
you're
as you go in then, are you?
Yeah, so like I will split my page in two.
Yeah.
Home team on the left, away team on the right. I'll jot down corners, just tally them up. Write down major chances, and then like if they come to us really quick usually when there's goals, so I just write down the scorer and the assist, and then I try to remember what happened. Try to. At Premier League games you get replays, but annoyingly in the Championship and below you don't. So yeah, you've got nothing to reference it back. And when they play the goals and you're like, well, everyone can see what happened, but I can't see it back. It's quite weird.
Yeah.
So on a soccer special, we play the goals in as we're talking about them, but we can't see the goal, which is, yeah, annoying, but it's just the way it is because of technology and things. So yeah, that's really fun. Like, being out and about, obviously, is just loads of variables. When the crowd are in, which I'm looking forward to having them back, like you might have some rowdy ones behind you, or you might have some really friendly people that want to chat, and you're like, I can't hear you, I've got my headphones on. But in the studio, it's very, very different. You're in the middle of the newsroom. So the first time I did it, I was like, oh my God, like everyone can hear me. Like, I felt really self-conscious. But then I'm like, oh, hold on a minute, like I'm on TV, what am I on about? Because I think on Soccer Saturday, I literally just feel like I'm talking to Jeff.
Yeah.
But in the studio, obviously, we have an auto cue, a million cameras, bright lights, makeup. It's very, very different. And I wouldn't call it glamorous, but obviously it is TV. So it looks glamorous to a certain point. I think I was really self-conscious to start with, like being in the middle, because imagine like a big C shape. That's what the newsroom is like, and the studio's plonked in the middle. It's a live sort of environment. But I don't think the presenters get enough credit, like on Sky Sports News, because they have auto cue, yes, but if there's live sport going on, they have to be across 5 or 6 things. So there might be like a Premier League match, a Championship match, 2 Scottish matches going on, the F1, a tennis open, a golf, two golf tournaments, and a rugby match. You think that's 8 things to stay across. And when we're double header, which hopefully we will go back to after COVID and all that, you split it in 2. sometimes you get the thing you didn't want, like maybe you don't know so much about, because you can't know everything about everything. Of course you can't. But that's why I started playing golf, because I wanted to understand what I was talking about. So obviously I knew what a birdie, eagle, and par and all that was, but I wanted to understand, I guess, the physics of how it worked, and to appreciate what they do. And obviously you can't do that for a Formula One car, but you can do that for something like golf. And I already played tennis, and I know a little bit about rugby. So most sports, like, I'm quite familiar with, because I'm very, very sporty, and I'm a massive F1 fan. But golf was sort of a big hole for me, and well, it's a new love now, you know, the last few years. So I think when to go back to your original point, to be in the studio, you do have to have a very good sporting knowledge. You know, it's not about just standing there and putting your makeup on and trying to look nice and read the auto cue. It's not like that anymore at all. I really enjoy being in the studio. It's really good fun. Especially, it depends who you're on with as well. You have quite a good laugh.
Yeah, I suppose because I don't know how it works, but is there like a core of, you know, ones that, because they have the same shift, I assume, like a breakfast, an afternoon slot, a drive slot?
Yeah, not at the moment because of COVID, obviously. Everything's sort of very, very different. And unfortunately, like, I haven't been back since Zach was born, actually, which I'm really, really gutted about. And hopefully I'll get back. I would hope to get back before Christmas, but because, like, I'm now freelance for that, it just depends if freelancers are going to be back in before then, because obviously, like everything, they're restricted to people on site. But pre-COVID, so breakfast is always one guy called Mike Wedderburn with another person. And then between 4 and 8, it was always Jim White with another person. But they were the only set things.
Okay.
So, yeah, I was on with Jim a lot, which was just...
What's he like?
Well, lovely. Like, he's a really nice guy. And I think people maybe form an opinion on obviously what they hear on the radio and TV, and fine if someone's not to your taste, that's fine. But as I always liked him anyway as a broadcaster, but as a person, you know, he's a really nice man, and I have his number and I can text him whenever I want, which is nice. And then there's lots of other people that are really fun. Like Pete Grace is a really, really good lad and really good to work with, and Tom White, who's been there years.
Yeah,
it's just names off the top of my head. And then been on with, you know, the fellow ladies is really good, like Hayley McQueen and loads of others, you know, the ones that have been there a long time. Vicky Gormasaw's been there. They were so good to me when I first started, like, because it's quite unusual to sort of be on Sky Sports News all of a sudden. But because I'd had that transition from reporting, that was really good for me. And actually, I was the first person to be a reporter, be a Soccer Saturday reporter, and present on Sky Sports News. I was the first person to do it. So that was pretty cool. I think maybe one or two have done it since. And since then, I think Sky have seen, you know, reporters can present and vice versa, which is nice.
And also, like, for me, I suppose, as I was growing up, I remember, you know, you remember probably some of the guys because of the knowledge, but then you remember back in the day some of the girls because you'd have had things like FHM, Nuts.
I know.
And magazines. It just seemed a
world away, didn't it?
And the girls, you kind of, Sky Sports News presenter, is it because she's good looking? Kirsty Gallagher's or whatever. And it's completely changed now, and you see the level of reporting from, you know, females in sport. I can't remember the girl's name. You know, there's one up in Leeds. Is it Laura Woods or Woodsy?
Laura Woods, yeah. She's
on TalkSport now.
Yeah, she does TalkSport breakfast. But yeah, no, I can see why you're saying that. And I think maybe like 10, 15 years ago, there was an argument to be had. Maybe were people on Sky Sports News that into sport? And I'm sure that people would say, I'm not sure. Like, I don't know some of them because they've left, so I wouldn't want to speak to them, whether they love like football or golf. But I know that, to be fair, like Kirsty, you just mentioned, like, actually, like, knows so much about golf because of her dad, and her knows a lot about football. But there were some people perhaps that didn't know so much, just from what I've heard. But I guess they learned it. But were they put on for the way they looked? Like, I think that's a fair comment. And I think now we're going the other way, which is great. We're sort of seeing people come through broadcasting because of their knowledge, rather than maybe, like you say, being in magazines.
Aesthetics.
I can't imagine that now, you know.
I know.
I can't imagine someone call. I mean, I don't think I would get a call, but someone calling you to do a shoot in like Nuts or FHM, I'd be like, sorry, I've just had a baby. That's not going to happen today.
Get you in the Barry Gem or something, shall we? The Glamorgan Gazette.
God. Oh yeah, big time.
It was a different time then. You know,
it was a different time
before social media properly, and you know, that was what people did.
And I don't think people would. I think it's a different world now.
Yeah,
I don't think that would happen. You know, I mean, I wouldn't do it. Well, no, I wouldn't do it.
If the money's good enough, pal,
I guess I was the money, but no. I don't think Zach would ever. I don't think my son would ever forgive me. So,
Definitely. What's talk to me a little bit then about, so Twitter specifically. You have massive following on Twitter. Obviously, your knowledge of football is brilliant, and not just a case of, formations or how they've scored goals or anything, but real intricate details around specific clubs, the workings of clubs, your relationships with managers, with players. It is second to none in the clubs that you work with a lot.
Sure.
How do you find that Twitter sphere for you? Because you're a very positive person on there, and you're not. I don't think you get that back with a lot of what you get back.
Yeah, it's a bizarre place, isn't it, Twitter? It's like, I'm astounded still in like 2020 that are not like verification identity checks on there. I just think it's just put your passport number in, or just put your driving license number in, and you can report someone. And the amount of times I've like reported and blocked people, and they're like, "No, that doesn't violate our guidelines." I'm like, what do you have to do to violate their guidelines? But yeah, I think on there there's loads of sexism, and it doesn't personally bother me. Like when someone tells me to get back in the kitchen, I just think it's funny.
I mean, what's the worst you've had? What's the worst you've had?
So a few weeks ago, there was like an advert up. I was literally looking for a present for our little boy. But like every advert because he's 9 months old and he can play with what he wants, but he's obsessed with like the tipper truck over the road. So I was trying to find him a tipper truck, and so it was away from football. It wasn't work related, and every advert had like just this toy for your little boy and like a picture of a boy playing with a digger. I'm like, this is really bad. So like I just tweeted it saying, like in 2020 or whatever, is this how it should be? Basically was the premise of the tweet. Or some of the stuff I had back, unreal.
Like what?
Trying to think of some of it at the top of my head. Well, lots of F-offs and lots of Karens. Don't like being called a Karen. But also like, oh, like, you silly wench, like, who do you think you are? Bitch, all sorts. Basically saying like they felt really sorry for my kid, feel really, really bad for him, and like stuff like that. Like I hate, like that's too far. The stuff where they have like a differing opinion from you on football, and then they go down that line, you're like, oh well, like
you've won the argument.
Yeah, exactly. There was an amazing one last week where this guy disagreed with something I said and said like, I'm a useless female reporter. I'm like, well, why do you have to use the word female? And he just sort of kept coming back. But I don't often respond, but when you do respond, people are like, oh, why do you respond? And it's like, oh, because I want to stick up for myself. Like, is that okay with you? Like when you get loads of them, you want to say something back. So anyway, replied to this guy, and then Adam, my husband, like he never gets involved, but he replied and said, like, she's obviously not useless because all these broadcasters use her. He's like, oh, what's your loving for her? And like he just tweeted back like with a picture of us together and said, like, we've been married for 5 years, and completely owned him. It was amazing. And then the next day someone was like, I don't like how you handled that. I'm like, hold on, you don't like how we handled someone having a go?
A random person imposing themselves on you, though.
Yeah. Anyway, I get an email that next day, and this guy has emailed me, and it's the one that had tweeted me, and it's a massive apology, saying like he's really rethought how he behaves online and doesn't want to go down like a negative route and all of this. It was amazing. And he's like, I want to donate some money to charities of your choice. And I was like, well, you don't have to do that. It's enough that you've rethought what you tweeted. But he donated £100 to pregnancy, sickness support and prostate cancer. I was like, oh my God, like, if occasionally calling out someone has that sort of impact, then that's not a bad thing, is it?
It's an education, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you should be able to stand up for yourself and not just accept the rubbish that gets sent to you.
Now, I mean, let's call a spade here. Do you get a load of shit on Twitter because you're a female in a male-dominated sport, I say in inverted commas, doing the job that most males would love to do but can't?
If you have an opinion on something, they don't like it, yes.
Yeah.
Not for tweeting a picture of you at ground or whatever.
No.
But if you start talking about a club or an appointment or a transfer or like, this is it. Like, I don't really go off top. I just stay on, not I don't go off football or sport much anymore because people are just, they just think it's an invitation
It's
to.
exhausting, isn't it?
Yeah, massively, and that's why I just stick to football and sport, and then mainly.
Yeah.
Instagram's different. I like Instagram. Instagram's a completely different platform. I think completely different. I think Twitter can be horrible.
Twitter, I think with Twitter, obviously, it's just short opinions which people will use and as spiteful as possible.
Trying to egg as their blooming picture. You're like, come on now, have a look at yourself.
18 numbers in their name.
Yeah, exactly. Like, or Fred from Manchester. All right then.
Yeah, he's got like an England flag on it.
Yeah, exactly. And then like something like #Brexit, #EDL. And you're like, okay, we're not going to win this one. We're not going to change him.
Does it put you off being you sometimes?
Well, yeah, like I just said, like I don't really put that much personal stuff on Twitter anymore because people are just nasty on there, Instagram is better, but I feel like my little boy has a strawberry mark on his head, and it's something that in time will probably fade away. If it doesn't, I don't care, and I really don't want him to care about it at all. But if people are like, oh, what have you done to him, or what's wrong with him? And you're just like, oh God, really? Like, why do you care? Like, why can't I put a picture of him up without you saying that? So yeah, on Instagram, my DMs are not open. But but apart from that, I think Instagram is a much sort of nicer place. And in the main, I do genuinely think there are good people. There's a lot of idiots, but I think in the main there are sort of good people around. And the good, for me, the good massively outweighs the bad, because if it didn't, then I wouldn't still be on there.
I do see, to be fair, you've got you've got quite a loyal following, and when someone does tweet you shit and you do reply, they do fly into them, to be fair, which again, two rights don't make a wrong, but
no.
People do have your back.
When people sort of tweet abuse back, like I don't like it or get involved, because I'm like, oh, probably shouldn't be getting involved with that. But and the thing is, like, I never swear on Twitter or Instagram, because it's like, it's your platform, isn't it? It's like an open mic, so I wouldn't swear on there.
I should probably listen to that.
That's all right. You're just swearing all over your podcast, so
I know.
You put a little 18+ on it, you'll be fine.
Exactly. I know you get some strange requests now and again, but also you get mistaken for being Michael Owen as well.
Yeah.
Talk to me about those two. So I saw there was a guy like after feet pictures or whatever.
Oh man, the feet thing is weird. Like, I'm in a group of mums, like from our antenatal group, and they found like a Wikipedia feet page, and my feet were on it. But yeah, some people just have a foot fetish and want pictures of your feet and offer you £1,000. Adam, my husband's like, do it, we can go on holiday.
100%, mate.
And then send a picture of like someone else's feet. So that's a weird one, and it doesn't bother me the slightest. It's just, whatever you're into, fair enough, but you're not having a picture of my feet. And what was the other one? Oh, Michael Owen, yeah.
Michael Owen.
People just can't read, but I think it's because my Twitter name, my Instagram name is @MichelleOwen7. So he obviously wore 7 at Manchester United, and people get confused. It happens so much, and he's tweeted me back about it before. And then when he released his book last year, he sent me a signed copy of his book saying, sorry for all the abuse you get online. Like, the same for me. So do you know what? I played football with Michael Owen once in a charity game up at Chester, and it was really good fun. And like, he was one of my heroes growing up, France '98, and I used to run around my garden pretending to be Michael Owen. So it's all a little bit surreal, and if you think about it like that. But yeah, people just need to learn to read and realise that I have no opinion on my time at Newcastle United because I wasn't there. So
I love that. That's class.
I know. Oh.
Let's talk to. Obviously, you've mentioned Zach a few times. What's talk to for any mums that are listening, I suppose anyone who's interested. Talk to me about sort of the pregnancy and some of the stuff you went through and how you got through that, because it was horrific at times.
Yeah. So we were really lucky. Like, we tried for Zach and we got pregnant, and felt really fortunate. And that after the first sort of few days after we found out, we were really on edge, because my sister had a lot of miscarriages, and nothing's a given, is it? So we were on edge about that. What happened, like, I would never have expected. So from around sort of 4.5 weeks pregnant, I started getting what I thought was morning sickness.
Yeah.
So I remember before going to do a presser at Cardiff, I was being sick in the morning, got to the presser, did a live, and then went to be sick in the toilets. And I felt awful. I was like, oh, this is like, I don't feel great. And the game on the Saturday, can you hear me all right? Because that's...
Yeah.
Do you want me to go in?
No, that's all right.
Is that all right? So did a presser on the Saturday. Did the presser on the Friday, did game on the Saturday, and then on the Monday, just sort of went downhill and was feeling so bad to the point I was being sick 20, 30 times an hour. Not a day, sorry, not an hour. And
I was about to say then. That's
God, not an hour.
impressive.
Jeez, yeah, but 20 to 30 times a day is still impressive. And then on
Yeah.
the Tuesday, like I was meant to be in a Swansea game, I was like, oh, I don't think I can go in. Like, I don't think I can work this. Phoned in sick, and Adam, my husband, was like, are you sure? Like, you might be feeling better later. It's just morning sickness. And by the evening, like, I was sort of collapsing, and we had to get me to hospital, and it just got worse and worse, and to the point where I was being admitted to hospital once a week for a drip to keep me hydrated. And it's something called hyperemesis. And 1% of pregnant women get it. And it makes you obviously really, really sick. I was given gradually various anti-sickness drugs. A lot of them didn't work. So I'd just be lying in bed like all day. If I moved, I was sick. And then it sort of got to the point, like, I was like, can I carry on? Can I keep doing this? And Adam would say to me, oh, what's the alternative? And we knew what the alternative was. And he's like, I know you'd never do that. But like, my parents were really worried, and they were worried obviously about the baby, Zach, if he was okay. And so sort of between sort of week 8 and 14 of my pregnancy, I was literally just existing, in and out of hospital, on drips. And then it gradually started improving about week 18 or week 19. But, that's 18 weeks of being sick pretty much every day, a lot of it all day. We finally found a more sort of helpful unit at St. Michael's in Bristol. They had like a hyperemesis unit, and they gave us sort of a way to go in there in the day, have a drip, go home at night, which was sort of a godsend, really, because I didn't want to be in hospital the whole time. And they also helped move me on to like a third medication. So I was on like 9 anti-sickness pills a day, just to sort of try not stop the nausea, just stop me being sick,
Yeah.
And yeah, it was horrendous, absolutely horrendous. And not enough is oh, sorry, hold on. Do you want me to go in?
Yeah, you
It's
can
like
do.
my neighbour's out the back.
Hold
on, let me move inside. I know. I thought I could sit in the garden and do a podcast, but obviously not. Wait, let me move inside.
You can edit this anyway.
Out, right?
Yeah.
Huh?
I might keep it in for bands.
Oh, well, you can keep in that they're an absolute pain in the backside. Literally. Oh, God. I'll have to tell you off the podcast what happened the other night. Yeah, so what was I saying? Yeah, just to get back to my point, it was awful. Like, I genuinely just couldn't see how I was going to get through it, like, day to day. It was horrendous. Like, it was just a battle to, literally, it sounds dramatic, but even to survive. Because when you have hyperemesis, you have something in your body called, I hope I'm saying it right, cachexia.
Okay.
And that is something that your body produces when it thinks it's dying. And there's all sorts of other incredible statistics with research that's been done in the last few years, that basically a patient that's chemotherapy obviously can get very, very sick, and you have 100 times more of the thing that makes you sick when you have hyperemesis than someone having chemotherapy. And we all know how sick people are when they have chemotherapy.
Yeah.
So your body literally feels like it's shutting down. And even like generally talk about it makes me feel nauseous, but I want to talk about it because, and the dog does too. Bonnie, come here. Honestly, what's going on here? Because it was so awful that we need to sort of raise awareness for someone who might be sat at home, like knowing a friend that's going through it, or be going through it themselves, and not really know what it is, not know how to ask for help. I just had so many problems trying to get help. Honestly, it was It was awful. And because you don't have the strength to sort of say how you feel, you can't communicate properly, and it's just a vicious circle. So, you know, that doesn't tell all the nitty gritty, but there were moments like I was on my hands and knees in the high street, like after being sick, while Adam was trying to like get me to a doctor. Like I couldn't even go in the car without being sick. It was just, yeah, the worst 5 months of my life by far, like the worst.
Sounds horrific, mate.
Yeah, I wouldn't wish it upon anyone. Should get Barney a bone, so he leaves us alone to chat. Barney the dog, that is. And there's a toy. But yeah, it's just, I think people like, you tell people you're sick, and they just think, oh, okay, it's morning sickness, you know. But morning sickness is horrible, and take nothing away from that.
Yeah.
But this is just, I always feel like when I describe it, I don't actually do it justice, because I know there's other people going through it right now, and I want to say what it's like for them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, look, I even on my worst hangover, if you're being sick 3 or 4 times in a day, that's bad enough.
Imagine your worst hangover
5
every day, times about 5.
Yeah.
Like day after day, relentless. And I just feel so lucky for me that it stopped around the halfway mark, because there genuinely were times in those first 18 weeks that I just thought I couldn't do it. I couldn't go on. And we wanted Zach. You know, we didn't know if it was a boy or a girl or whatever at that point, but we wanted him so much. And we know like what a blessing it is to be able to have a child. So yeah, it was incredibly difficult, but somehow we got through it. And there's a charity that I'm now an ambassador for called Pregnancy Sickness Support, and I had a WhatsApp buddy in the end they linked me up with, and she just texted me and say, how you doing? And most of the time, like, I couldn't even go on my phone and things. It was that bad. You literally just try and lay as still as you could and not be sick. You know, I lost over a stone and a half, maybe more. Going into the week 18, I weighed 51 kilograms, and before I had Zach, I weighed 61.
Yeah.
And then luckily for me, the second half was much better. I was still a bit sick, and I still felt nauseous a lot, and I was very, very swollen. I had a lot of water retention and things, and it was deeply uncomfortable being pregnant, and I don't miss it in the slightest. But yeah, I was one of the lucky ones that it stopped halfway forward. I just really hope that in a few years' time, it's not going to happen in my reproductive lifetime, but I just hope they find something that will help people going through this and stop this, because a lot of women sadly terminate their pregnancies and things because of HG. It's just horrendous.
And then they'll obviously get judged for that as well, then, without people
Yeah,
knowing
exactly.
what
Like, people
through.
don't understand unless you've seen someone really close to go through it, or you've gone through it yourself. It's very hard to describe. That's
mate, fair play. And like, thankfully, Zach is perfectly healthy. And
yeah, he arrived a month. One thing that people don't tell you when you have HG is often the baby's premature.
Okay.
And Zach was a month early, so not severely premature, but we had to stay in for a while, and he had a bit of jaundice. But we just feel very lucky to have him. And it's hard when people say, "Oh, do you think you'll have another?" Because like, having gone through that, I just can't see how we would. It's just like, yeah. I mean, my mother-in-law. It's like, you know, I'm not saying it against anyone. My mother-in-law says, "Oh, when you have a second," I'm like, "Hello, should we rewind a year?" So yeah, it's hard, and it leaves a lot of scars in terms of, you know, when you smell something or a food, or like today I was driving up to go and do a shoot at Bristol Rovers, and it's the same way we used to go to the first hospital that I used to get admitted to, and it made me feel sick. It's those little things. And like the change of the seasons, like from winter to spring to summer, makes me feel sick. So it's going to take a while, like, to process and get over it. But you know,
that's the psychology of it.
It's the psychology of it. So I do feel lucky that we got little Zachy.
I feel sorry for Zach, because when he's older, he'll never live it down. You know, when you're telling him off, you don't understand what I went through.
I say it now. It's like, he's getting me up at 2 a.m. I'm like, do you not understand? You're 9 months old. You should know by now. But
Funny.
Yeah, it's mad.
Oh, fair play to you. I'm obviously glad everything, you know, worked out at the end, although it was horrific. You just got a smile on your face still, which is testament, I suppose, to your resilience and and what you've been through and what you've done. So fair play to you, mate. I want to bring it back to just a bit more around the sport, I suppose, before we shoot off. I know I'm taking over a load of your time chatting. Absolutely. What's who's your favourite? Where's your favourite place to go? Who's your favourite manager and then player that you like to?
Oh, good questions, which I never know the answer to because I get asked them a bit. My favourite place to go is Cardiff City Stadium on an international night when Wales are playing.
Class. So good.
It's so good. Like, you'll know if you've been there, and like when the national anthem is sung and they don't do it with the music, it's just the crowd, like spine tingling, absolutely amazing. That is very special.
Zombie Nations go mental before.
Yeah. I mean, like, I'm half English, half Welsh, which people struggle to get their heads around. But and I genuinely support both countries equally.
Yeah.
And then when they play, I decide at the time. But you know, it's just the Welsh fans are amazing, absolutely amazing. I was so looking forward to the Euros and being with them.
Yeah.
So look forward to that next summer. So yeah, that's probably my favourite place. Favourite manager, I love Neil Warnock. You know, I know he's like Marmite, but he's amazing, and he just gives you a straight answer, and he's great on things like deadline day, and he's genuinely a lovely, lovely man. And for me, like, there's loads of managers who are fantastic that I've dealt with, but he just springs to the front of my mind when you say that. So yeah, he's brilliant.
A funny bloke as well.
Yeah, he is really funny. Some of the stuff he comes out with. And favourite player, that's a good one. Favourite player.
Players can be quite insular with interviews. And
yeah, they can.
It's like they're media trained within an inch of their life sometimes.
Oh, and they're so scared to say anything, and they don't want to be caught out. But I think over time you develop a relationship with players, and a lot of players, without sounding like an idiot, like, know my face. They've seen me around. They know I'm not going to stitch them up or whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm really skirting around the question here, but I couldn't really put my finger on one. There's a lot that are just lovely to talk to, like outside of media, and you know, some like you can message and say hello to, some like I can message for a game of golf and things.
Yeah.
But you know, I find obviously Championship players and League One, League Two a lot more approachable because perhaps they have less demands and less attention on them.
Yeah.
In the Premier League, Troy Deeney springs to mind. I'm not saying he's my favourite player, but I just remember going to interview him at Watford, and they just lost to Leicester season before last. I was like, "Hi, Troy, I'm Michelle." It's the first time I'd interviewed him. He was like, "Yeah, I know who you are." I was like he's like really intimidating guy, but was fine. Was absolutely lovely to speak to, considering they'd just lost in the last minute.
He was really good on Louis Through's. Louis Through did a thing with him recently.
I haven't seen this. I need to see this.
It's on his podcast, and he speaks so openly about his father and the crime and how he got through football,
prison, and
then himself as well. Yeah, really, really good.
He's a really interesting guy. Like, there was a really great feature on, I think it was the BBC a few years ago, where him and AJ did something ahead of one of AJ's fights. And
that's
talked
it.
About what it was like growing up and things.
Before his Cardiff fight, I think.
Yeah, I think players that have a really interesting background are great to speak to, and I've sat down and done a lot of player interviews, and some of them are just completely forgettable because they just say, like you say, media trained answers. But some of them are interesting, and when they let you in a little bit and you learn a little bit about themselves, they're the best ones, you know.
Yeah.
And personally, I'm not out to catch anyone out, and
no, of course.
You know, I understand why footballers think that, and I think in the past there has been that sort of tabloid society of journalism that has wanted to get those headlines, wanted to catch players out. But I just, you know, I've heard all sorts about players before, and things that maybe a little bit scandalous, things that are a bit worse, things that shouldn't have happened. But you know, I don't do anything with them because I don't think that's a great way to build your name in journalism and reporting. If it was something, you know, morally that you should report, then I think, okay, there's something to be said about that. But I think a lot of players are misunderstood as well. Like Jack Grealish at Aston Villa, I love talking to him. He is one of my favourite players because he's done a few silly things in the past, and he knows he has, and he acknowledges that, and he talks about it. But like, he is such a talented player. Like, when you watch him close up, people are like, "Oh, he's the most fouled player in the Premier League because he dives." I'm like, no, he gets fouled because he's so good. And yeah, to sit down with him and talk to him, which I've had the pleasure of doing a few times, has been really good. Tyrone Mings is another one. Speaks really well about mental health. Sits down and says, "How's your boy? How are you? How's your family?" And I love that. It's like, oh, you remember, like, that's really lovely. And just the normal guy. And I think because Tyrone Mings is someone that was let go when he was in his late teens. He was playing around here. He was playing up near Yate or Chippenham, and they played Ipswich in a friendly, and Mick McCarthy signed him, and that's how he got his big break. But before that, he was working as a mortgage advisor, So those players like him and Troy Deeney that have that real life experience, not that footballers don't, but they do grow up in that academy system. They go through to be a footballer, and they may have many hardships in their lives that we know nothing about. But those that have actually worked, like your Jamie Vardys and things, I think they're really great value. And that's what I love most about my job, is talking to people. Like, I love being in the studio and I love doing that. And I love being, like I said, I love being on air with people. But for me, like, my job is about people. Even with the football, like at Bristol City before I was pregnant, 2 little girls climbed up onto the gantry and like brought me a card for Zach and like guessing the gender. And it's about people and it's about talking to people. And I just hope we don't lose that now, especially with COVID and things. We can be more distant than ever, can't we? So I think that's super important. And one of the reasons I love my job, really. I'm very lucky.
I love that. I love a passion. You can see the passion and like the joy it gives you in your face as you're talking.
Yeah.
Well, I think one thing you mentioned about the footballers can be media trained. I think part of the problem comes as well from, especially nowadays, everyone's got a camera phone. So if they're out in a club or 10, 15 years ago, no one cared unless they did something wrong.
Yeah, absolutely.
But now they can't get away with doing anything. But then also for me, and I know a couple of sports journalists loosely, not very well, and I'd like to think that they're pretty good with this. But it's the headline writers, the clickbait headline writers.
Oh, clickbait's a massive thing now.
Which completely throws the story out just to get a reaction. And then they wonder why players don't want to interact as much. Yeah,
it's the world we live in, really, isn't it? And what people do with photos, where you can be recorded at any moment doing anything. Yeah, there's no escape. Every single person, pretty much, well, maybe apart from my grandparents, has a camera that they carry around with them, has a video recorder that they carry around with them, and it's just such a shame because it can be used so positively, and it is used positively. When we look at like the news, we know about things instantly, but also, people have lost that privacy. Great story that Matt Letizia told me once is we were walking with him and Franny Benali on one of Jeff's walks. And Franny Benali is your consummate professional, trained for Southampton, worked his way up through there, was there for ages, and really into his fitness. They're doing pre-season and they're on the run. And this run is massive. And Tiss and the other lads are like, "Oh, Franny, let's just take a shortcut." And Franny's like, no, we've got to do this properly. And then a flatbed truck comes past. They wave him down. They jump on the back of the truck and duck down. And they haul Franny Benali onto it, get him to duck down as well. And they get him to drop him back at the training ground. And like, that would never happen now. Like, that would never happen. And they used to have beers after games, and I know they have a beer after a game now, but it was also different back then.
Saw a night with Paul Merson once, and he openly spoke about the highs, but also the lows, and when Arsenal and Portsmouth, and it's interesting when you see behind the lens of someone, and you get a day of their life.
Oh, there's so much more than what people just see on social media or in front of a camera. And that's why I hate, if people are like, "Oh, I hate them." I'm like, you don't even know them.
No.
Like, how can you hate Joe Bloggs when you don't know anything about him just because he plays for a team you don't like? Like, come on, you know? And it's just having that emotional intelligence, which some people need to process a little bit more.
I agree with you
mate.
there,
I'm not saying anyone, but yeah.
No, I know what you mean. What's the best moment you've been at, and what's the one moment you wish you were at?
Best moment I've been at, possibly Wales qualifying for Euro 2020, or maybe when there's nothing like spectacular about this game, but it was Villa Nottingham Forest, and it was 5-5. It finished 5-5. It was just a normal Tuesday night in November, and the game finished 5-5, and it was just the maddest, craziest game. I think it had a sending off, it had disallowed goals, It had everything. It was the best game I've ever done. So that's my favourite. One I wish I'd been at, everyone would say the 1966 World Cup. That's proper cliche, isn't it? But I wish I'd been in Wales, in France for Wales in 2016 for their Euro run. I wish I'd been there when they beat Belgium.
Yeah.
But, you know, I mean, at the time, I wouldn't have been in a position to be there work-wise. But I remember them beating Belgium. I just had my appendix out and I was on my sofa. And it was just watching the scenes unfold as they went through the tournament and the momentum built. I think in recent history, that is the one where, like, it was within touching distance. Do you know what I mean? Like, I was just like, could have been there. So that would be the one for that. Yeah, definitely.
Class, I love that. Hey, look, I appreciate your time. I know that you're very, very busy, working 7 days a week or whatever.
Not doing that anymore. I've got a baby.
Well, yeah, and hopefully, you know, like you said earlier about the crowds coming back, I hope they do come back soon at some point, because
I hope
it's
so.
not the same.
Yeah, it's not the same. And like going back, you know, when I went back in June, it was weird. Like I had my headphones on, so I didn't notice it as much. But it just gives the teams that little extra edge. And you know, from a personal point of view, for me, like obviously I don't work 7 days a week anymore. Like we've got a little boy, but I just would love to be back working a couple of days a week and being a mum as well, because obviously that's a big part of me now. And when people talk about identity, you know, like you're a dad, when you become a parent, your identity like does shift. And I remember when Zach was born, like the first 12 weeks, like just being in this fog and thinking, I'm never going to get back to like, not being worried about it, just thinking, oh, that doesn't matter anymore. I won't be like that again. But here we are, like, you know, talk about work and working again. And I want to, you know, want my cake and eat it, which you can't always have. But I'm hoping, you know, that I can be with him a lot of the time, but also be working. So we'll see what happens in this new season. I just hope for everyone's sake, like you say, we can all be back together watching football. It's how it should be, isn't it?
I think people need sports, and you know,
100%.
you've definitely got the drive and passion to go where you want to go in this sport. So thank you very much for coming on, Michelle. I really appreciate it, and we'll I'll probably put a bit around HG as well, and the charity that you support.
Yeah, charities, pregnancy sickness support. I'm actually doing a podcast for them on Friday, talking all about it as well. So yeah, the more we talk about it, hopefully the more, you know, take me back 18 months and I wouldn't have known anything about it. So the more we talk about it, if someone's partner is going through it, or if you're going through it, or maybe you've never heard of it, it's just something to be aware of, I think, definitely.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Big thanks to Tiny Rebel Brewery for providing the beers. Big thanks to everyone who subscribes, downloads, rates, reviews. It is really appreciated, and hopefully there's you know, some bigger things to come as well. So that is us for this week. Over and out. Thank you very much.